America faces a crisis. It's not a new virus or a financial crash. It is a silent epidemic of eviction. Millions of Americans are forced from their homes each year, often with little warning or recourse. This hidden crisis has devastating consequences, pushing families into poverty, instability, and despair. It's time to shine a light on this often overlooked issue. We must understand its root causes and work towards solutions. The eviction crisis is not just a housing problem. It's a societal problem that affects us all. When families are evicted, the ripple effects are felt throughout communities. Schools see higher student turnover. Healthcare systems are burdened with increased demand. The cycle of poverty becomes more entrenched. We can no longer afford to ignore the human cost of eviction. The faces of eviction are diverse. They are single mothers struggling to make ends meet. They are families hit by unexpected medical bills. They are seniors living on fixed incomes. These are our neighbors, our friends, and our fellow citizens facing a system that often feels rigged against them. We must remember that behind the statistics are real people with real stories of hardship and resilience. This essay will explore the realities of America's eviction crisis. We will delve into its causes and consequences, focusing on the heartbreaking impact on children and families. We will examine the legal landscape that often favors landlords over tenants. By understanding the complexities of this issue, we can begin to seek meaningful solutions that prioritize the well-being of all Americans. Eviction is often the first step towards homelessness. When families lose their homes, they lose their stability, their security, and their sense of belonging. Children are particularly vulnerable in this situation. They lose their schools, their friends, and their sense of normalcy. The trauma of eviction can have long-lasting effects on their physical and emotional well-being. The link between eviction and homelessness is undeniable. Studies show that eviction is a leading cause of homelessness, especially for families with children. When families are evicted, they often have nowhere to go. They may end up in shelters, on the streets, or doubling up with other families, further straining already limited resources. This cycle of instability can trap families in a downward spiral of poverty and hardship. The impact of homelessness on children is particularly devastating. Homeless children are more likely to experience health problems, developmental delays, and educational challenges. They are also more likely to be exposed to violence, crime, and exploitation. The trauma of homelessness can leave lasting scars on their lives. Addressing the eviction crisis is crucial to preventing homelessness. We need policies that provide greater support for tenants facing eviction, such as legal aid, rental assistance, and eviction diversion programs. We also need to address the root causes of eviction, such as poverty, lack of affordable housing, and systemic inequities. The eviction crisis is particularly acute in the southern states of South Carolina and Georgia. These states have some of the most landlord-friendly eviction laws in the country, making it easier for landlords to evict tenants for minor infractions or even without cause. The lack of tenant protections in these states leaves families vulnerable to displacement and homelessness. In South Carolina, landlords can evict tenants for almost any reason, with just a few days' notice. There are no laws requiring landlords to provide a reason for eviction, and the burden of proof often falls on the tenant to prove that the eviction is unjustified. This creates a power imbalance that favors landlords and leaves tenants with little recourse. Georgia's eviction laws are similarly tenant-unfriendly. Landlords can evict tenants for non-payment of rent with just a few days' notice, and they are not required to provide a grace period or accept partial payments. The state also has a pay-to-stay law, which requires tenants facing eviction to pay all past due rent and court costs in order to remain in their homes. This can be a significant financial burden for families already struggling to make ends meet. The lack of tenant protections in South Carolina and Georgia contributes to the high rates of eviction and homelessness in these states. It's essential to reform these laws to provide greater balance and fairness in the eviction process. Strengthening tenant protections will help to prevent unnecessary evictions and keep families in their homes. Section 4. Paying rent, facing eviction, a paradox. One of the most unsettling realities of the eviction crisis is that many families are evicted even when they have paid their rent. This can occur for various reasons, including clerical errors, disputes over late fees, or misunderstandings about lease agreements. In many cases, tenants are unaware of their rights or lack the resources to fight back against wrongful evictions. The power imbalance between landlords and tenants often plays a role in these situations. Landlords have access to legal counsel and resources that tenants often lack. They may also be more familiar with the nuances of eviction law and know how to exploit loopholes in the system. This can leave tenants feeling powerless and vulnerable. The irony of being evicted despite paying rent highlights the flaws in the current eviction system. It underscores the need for greater transparency, accountability, and fairness in the eviction process. Tenants need better access to legal aid, clearer information about their rights, and stronger protections against wrongful evictions. The eviction crisis is not just about non-payment of rent. It's about a system that often fails to protect the most vulnerable members of our society. Reforming the system is essential to ensuring that all Americans have access to safe, stable, and affordable housing. And Section 5. Scars that don't fade. The lasting impact on families and children. The eviction crisis leaves lasting scars on families and children. The trauma of losing their homes, their belongings, and their sense of stability can have long-term consequences for their physical, emotional, and social well-being. The stress of eviction can lead to health problems, mental health issues, and substance abuse. Children are particularly vulnerable to the harmful effects of eviction. The disruption to their education, their social networks, and their sense of security can have a profound impact on their development. Evicted children are more likely to experience developmental delays, behavioral problems, and academic difficulties. They are also more likely to be exposed to violence and crime. The societal repercussions of the eviction crisis are far-reaching. Eviction contributes to the cycle of poverty, increases homelessness, and strains social services. It also erodes the fabric of communities, displacing families and weakening social ties. The human cost of eviction is immeasurable. We must prioritize solutions that address the root causes of eviction and provide support for families facing this crisis. Investing in affordable housing, strengthening tenant protections, and expanding access to legal aid are essential steps towards creating a more just and equitable housing system. We must remember that everyone deserves a safe and stable place to call home.